Remember Cliff Richard? How he lives now will break your heart? I thought I knew how this story would go. A legend fades, slows down, maybe disappears quietly. But what I found about Cliff Richard didn't feel quiet at all. It felt complicated. And honestly, I didn't expect that. Let me start somewhere strange. Not at the beginning of his career, but much later. Picture a man who once filled arenas, stood shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in music, and somehow stayed relevant across decades. That kind of longevity doesn't happen by accident. And yet there's this silence around him now that feels different. Not peaceful. Just heavy. Back in the day, Cliff Richard wasn't just popular, he was everywhere. Before the Beatles took over the world, Cliff was already dominating the UK charts. Clean image, charming smile, songs that stuck in your head whether you wanted them to or not. I mean, people forget that. I did too. But here's where the story shifts. Because fame like that doesn't just disappear, it transforms. And sometimes, it isolates. There's this moment I keep thinking about. Years after all the success, all the sold-out tours, Cliff found himself at the center of something he never saw coming. Serious allegations that were broadcast publicly before anything was proven. And I remember reading about it and thinking, wait, how does that even happen? His home was searched. The media covered it live. Leave. Just imagine that for a second. No warning. No privacy. Just cameras. He denied everything. And eventually, he was cleared. No charges. But here's the part that stuck with me. Even when your name is cleared, the noise doesn't fully go away. It lingers. That kind of public scrutiny changes something in a person. It has to. Now, when you look at his life, it's quieter. He still makes appearances, still connected to music in his own way. But it's not the same world he once ruled. And maybe that's normal. Or maybe it's not. I honestly couldn't decide. What surprised me most is how private he's become. For someone who lives so much of his life in the spotlight, he's pulled back in a way that feels intentional, almost protective. And I get it. After everything, wouldn't you? There's also something else people don't talk about much. Cliff Richard never followed the usual path. No marriage, no children. A life that looks full from the outside, but also very self-contained. And I'm not saying that's sad, but it does make you pause. Because when the crowds fade, when the headlines slow down, what's left? I keep going back to that question. Because his story isn't a clean rise and fall, it's more like waves. Massive highs. Then moments that feel almost too quiet. And maybe that's why this hits differently. Not because his life is tragic, but because it's real, messy, unpredictable, not tied up in a perfect ending. I didn't walk away from his story feeling sorry for him. Just thoughtful. About how quickly public love can turn into silence. And how even someone as iconic as Cliff Richard can end up living a life that feels a little more distant than we expected. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not the fame, not the controversy. Just the image of a man who gave decades to the world, and now lives mostly away from it.